would say to you, in
I have something behind yours, but that's well.
Mr. Thigpen.
Okay, so I did have something behind Dr. Treat because I think I have a higher level question. The policy. I am all for the policy, but as Mr. Gomez has told us in multiple meetings, we were not able to implement, and I'm sorry, we would not be able to implement in a timely manner. I mean, he was giving us the call to help, and I saw it in the meetings as I reviewed. My question is, we did not make a lot of changes to the handbook. This is where I'm confused. We didn't make changes to the handbook. We added some, we copied and pasted some handbook stuff into the policy, JCDI, to show to show how we are breaking out the levels. My question is, and this is probably for Dr. Watts or Mr. Hickman, because you're in charge of this. So help us understand, how did we get to the point of we are not tracking absenteeism, or we are doing excellent, because the consequences of violations, the explanation or type of violation is still there. It's still the same. It's still the same. But and especially for anything that has a law behind it, which would be from the fights to the carrying of guns, the drugs, and everything. Nothing has changed. Nothing. So how did we get to the point of we are no longer all having any consequences, all because we passed a policy which had very few changes except more explanation for certain levels, more of the lower levels actually, but all the higher levels of violations, nothing has changed. So, and people are saying, including teachers, students, they're stating that we no longer have consequences. We're not, for tardies AWOLs, we're not doing anything about it. So how did we get to that point? Because I can't understand how we couldn't explain this, that nothing has really changed over these past months.
Mr. Thigpen, can I weigh in there just a second? So of course I'm not going to have the answer, the full answer, but taking a step back. Remember that with policy JCDI, the first bucket of policy JCDI, that's where you as a board express your value statements. You've got to read those value statements to try to answer some of these questions. Your value statements were, I don't have them all in front of me, so forgive me, along the line that suspension would be used as a last resort. Your value statements were that we are now aware that discipline is developmental in nature, etc. Right? So I've given this example before to individuals. If I, as a father, am used to using one technique of discipline at home, and my wife says, hey, we need to change our way of disciplining, then as an implementation, I stopped doing those things I was doing before. So the kid may say, oh my God, daddy's not doing the same thing he did to me before. Maybe I can get away with this behavior more often. But if your value statement, I appreciate the fact that you're now saying that maybe we need to take a relook at that. But if your value statements, those are the first 8 or 9 things of that policy, say things like, we know discipline is developmental. We know we need to use suspension as a last resort. We are sending the message that we as a collective body want to look at discipline in a different way. That policy, nowhere in that policy does it say stop suspending kids. What it says, though, is we encourage you to look at it a different way. So let's go to fighting. One of the things that you and I experienced in one of our meetings with a group of individuals was the ideology that, or perception, that in the past, anytime a kid exhibited a behavior, we could get the words that were used, get rid of them. Those are not my words. Those are the words that were used by that person, right? So if my philosophy was that every time a kid did X behavior, I was allowed to get rid of them. And now I'm being told, hey, be more reflective, be more restorative, provide an intervention. I may end up with the idea that if I cannot get rid of the kid, I'm not being supported, or I can get the idea that behavior is worse. So we've got to balance it out. Do we believe in the value statements that are contained in the policy? That's my first question. Maybe in trying to get to point X, we need to relook at those value statements. But those value statements send the message across the system. If I'm a teacher, if I'm a principal, and my board says, I want you to understand that we consider suspension as a last resort, what do you think I'm going to do? Consider suspension as a last resort. That's one of the statements in policy JCI. So that could, I'm not saying it's all, could add to the implementation confusion. So again, maybe one of the things we need to do, and we are doing, is reteaching that. Because what I keep hearing is that we still want, as a board, a deep understanding that we want to look at discipline in a different way than we used to. How do we look at discipline in a different way than we used to, but still ensure safety, real and perceived? So that's my 2 cents worth, and thank you for allowing me to put that in there. Doesn't mean that